November 22nd, 1963. The nation will never forget nor cease debating one of the darkest days in American history.
All we know with certainty is that shots were fired over here on Elm Street.
President John F. Kennedy assassinated in front of dozens of disbelieving bystanders.
They knew that the president was shot in the head.
And while most are no longer with us, like Abraham Zapruder, whose home movie camera captured these graphic images, the most famous 26 seconds of film ever recorded.
We sat down as a family and watched the Zapruder film over and over again.
Amateur photographers like Tina Towner and her father just feet away from calamity.
I was a witness to the Kennedy assassination.
And local reporters scrambling to gather the facts, like my father, Brett Shipp.
One quote we got out there was Yarborough said the scene was too gruesome to describe.
And newspaper reporter Darwin Payne.
Whether or not Kennedy was wounded or had been killed, we knew it was a big story, and I went after every detail I could.
They left behind the haunting images documenting the shocking turn of events forever etched in our memories, in our museums, and in our archives.
It says Lee Harvey Oswald. What does that tell me?
This is an offense report regarding the shooting.
This is the story of those unwitting individuals who bore witness to history, to tragedy, and to destiny.
I've been coming here since the assassination. That's my first memory of Dealey Plaza, was my dad bringing me here after the assassination. And I want to say it was probably a week or so later. I do remember that. I was 5 years old. I was almost 5 years old. It's interesting that we want to preserve this, we want to remember, but at the time, it was such a shame on this city. It was such a scourge. It was such a dark place in history, and this city was really, really shamed at the time and wanted to forget it, and now we don't want to forget it. My family, we sat down as a family and watched the Zapruder film over and over again and talked very vividly about my dad's experience, which he not only shared with his family, he shared nationally. The total trip downtown was supposed to take about 10 minutes, but because there were so many people, the crowds kind of slowed the motorcade, the procession down a little bit, because Kennedy wanted to wave and be friendly, and it was such a beautiful day. And there's the school book depository. We're moving along very slowly, people on both sides of the street, throngs of people waving, everything seemed normal, and nobody noticed that right up there was an open window with a rifle sticking out of it. Nobody was looking up there. It seemed like everyone was just focused on what was happening and making this turn. And he was going about this fast. We're pulling up, and the first shot, waving, the first shot hits right about here. Nobody really knows what's wrong. As he proceeds here, the second shot hits right here, and then immediately they realize something's wrong, and the motorcade speeds up. Under the triple underpass, the next stop was the trauma center at Parkland Hospital.
As far as I know still, I was the youngest photographer at the Kennedy assassination. I did see and hear a lot that day, and I didn't know it. I didn't even know it. I honestly believe that my father wanted me to go so he would have some help taking pictures. We got there about an hour before the motorcade did, and he said, I think we'd be better off down the hill. Mother and I didn't want to go. We were fine where we were. And he said, okay. And so then he picked the place out on the corner there where he wanted to stand, and we could have gotten closer.
Could have also been in harm's way.
Mm-hmm. And that was, you know, I don't know if I'd be here if we had been closer, so.
Were you nervous at all? Tell me what you remember feeling as the motorcade approached.
I wanted to do a good job. He told me, hold it still, you know, start when you can see it, just pan slowly around and follow the car until you can't see the car anymore. And I was focused on that. I didn't take my eye off of the viewfinder, so I didn't really see anything like a witness would have seen if they weren't taking photographs. I did know that Jackie Kennedy seemed to be looking right into the camera. It did look that way. And it looks like she's looking into Dad's camera too.
You're 13 years old. You're just looking through the lens. You're doing what you're told. You really aren't aware of what's going on, are you?
And I had finished shooting the film when I heard the first shot. And I still had the camera in my hand. I remember that my dad, he said, somebody just tried to shoot the president.
So the motorcade makes its way back here behind Parkland. We'll stop right here. And this is where they pulled up. And this is where they exited the vehicle and went into the emergency room right here. He was here. He was back here in a flash, getting film of the back seat of the limousine, the carnage in the back seat, the roses, Jackie's roses, when Sheriff Bill Decker walked out and talked to my father and said that Kennedy was dead. And that's when he decided, I've got to go. And he ran back around to the front of the building onto Harry Hines and commandeered a civilian car, stopped him in the middle of the street and said, let's go. Got on the air as fast as he could.
Bert, talk to you just a minute here. Is this all right? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you the chief cameraman and assistant news director of WFA television. This is Brett Shipp. Bert, we have brought the people pretty much up to date. Would you tell them exactly what you know as of this point?
Well, Jay, I was standing at the Trade Mart waiting his arrival there. All of a sudden, we saw them approaching. They didn't slow down. As a matter of fact, they were going 70 or 80 miles an hour past us. Everybody was unknowingly, didn't know what happened there at the Trade Mart. And then I jumped in a police car and went to Parkland. When I got there, I found that nobody knew too much about where he was hit, but they knew that the president was shot in the head. This is what I've been told now, Jay. The president was shot in the head. Connally was shot in the chest. Both of them are still alive when I left the hospital.
Do you have some film?
And yeah, I have film at the hospital.
Will you get the film and see if you can get it developed real quick,
yeah,
and we'll
I will.
put it on the air
and
run through.
One quote we got out there was Yarborough said the scene was too gruesome to describe.
You were at the Herald, right?
I was at the Times Herald. I'd been there since about April. And we were listening to the police scanner that went out to all the police officers. And he said, he's been hit, and we were terrified. What do you mean hit? What with? Like a sign? And then the next words that came out were, they're sending a homicide unit. When I saw all that chaos, the terror, the cheers, the uncertainty of all the people who were there, who were wandering around, wondering what had happened. They had not all had a good view of what actually had happened. And finally I found these women who seemed to be very tearful and who seemed to know precisely what they had seen. And these were the workers in Abraham Zapruder's office. One of them had been holding Zapruder's legs as he stood upon that pedestal to get a better picture of Kennedy. And so they were all that close, that little group of workers. And they said, our boss took pictures of it. Oh, where's your boss? I'd like to see him. I figured, of course, that any film that was taken probably would be very good. And I went up and met him, and he was in great tears. He loved Kennedy. Told me, he said, I know he's dead. He's got to be dead. I was watching that shot, and it looked like a firecracker exploding. And so you knew if he was accurate in it looking that way, that it hit him in the back of the head, that the president was dead.
November 22nd of 1963, I remember very distinctly my mom pulling up right here. And I went to preschool right in there, and there's a door right there. And I came out and I got in my mom's car. We'd just left the kindergarten, gotten in the car, and a bulletin came on the radio that the motorcade had been shot at. And it wasn't until we got home that we found out, and it came across the TV, that the president was dead. And I remember my mom just breaking out in tears. She was, I would say, hysterical. She was so upset.
Tell me about when you finally learned something or anything about what had just happened. Do you remember?
On the way home, the radio said that it was unconfirmed but the president had been shot at, and it was unconfirmed that he'd been hit. That was all we knew. The radio was blasting all over, and when we got home, we turned the radio on there, and we had sat down. Mother made us sandwiches, and we were eating, and the radio said that it was confirmed. I think that was when we heard that he'd been killed, that he had died. I was 13. I just didn't know what to think. I just knew my parents were upset. I asked them, am I going back to school? And they asked me if I wanted to, and I said, I guess so. So I went back to school. And then I was sorry I went back to school, because nobody was having classes, and the loudspeakers had the news playing, and the teachers were totally silent. I went to a counselor for a while in the late 80s or early 90s. I had teenage kids, and my parents needed care, and there were a lot of things going on. And she asked me in one of my sessions, have you ever had anything traumatic happen in your life? And interestingly, that JFK assassination didn't pop into my mind at first. And I'm thinking, no, my life has been like Beaver Cleaver's life. I mean, it's a great family. And then I said, oh, there was one thing. I was a witness to the Kennedy assassination. She made a face and started writing things down on her pad. And all she did was ask me how old I was, and where was I standing, and then she didn't know what to say. I stopped that conversation too.
This box originally held a reel of film that was of Oswald being shot by Ruby. We retained the envelopes, and I think you need to see this. Primary evidence is primary evidence. You're not learning about it secondhand or third hand. These are reading documents that were written and signed by real people at the time that they happened, or it isn't hearsay that's based on second, third, fourth hand evidence. This is all real first-hand evidence.
Where are we going?
Well, we're going to take a look here at the Dallas Police Department's Kennedy collection. This collection comprises approximately 11,000 paper pages and about 400 plus photographs that are all first day or first week evidence.
This says Lee Harvey Oswald. What does that tell me?
This is an offense report regarding the shooting of Governor John Connally.
All of the conversation, the controversy, the communications universally about the magic bullet, it's all explained very simply in this one paragraph of this police report. And this is the original, right?
Yes.
This is nothing to you. This is like unbelievable to me.
It's candy, all right.
Wow.
This was made by the police department, and it's the only known color image of Oswald made in captivity.
You know, one thing I've never noticed until just now is the holes in his undershirt,
Yeah.
in his little t-shirt. I don't know, but just the color imagery tells a different story.
Yeah.
These are Oswald's fingerprints.
Uh-huh. Had to get 2 or 3 impressions instead of just straight down. They held his hands down and rolled them around.
An unwilling participant in fingerprinting.
There's another set of prints that has typed on it, "refused to sign." This box originally held a reel of film that was of Oswald being shot by Ruby. The original reel belongs to the city of Dallas and is in cold storage as we speak, but we retain the envelopes, and I think you need to see this.
Exhibit 24A, sound film of the Oswald shooting received from WFAA, ABC TV, Mr. Brett Shipp. Wow. Wow. So this is my dad's handiwork, him turning over the film to the police department? Is that what that is? My dad.
I know it's just an envelope, but
there he is. That's my dad right there.
I loved your dad. All the other journalists loved your dad, as you know.
Yeah,
You don't need
yeah.
to be told that.
Bert was Bert.
Bert, a black day.
Indeed it is, Jay, but from the last report from police, they are converging on an area.
How were you able to process all these fast-moving events?
I do remember that it was easier for me than it would have been for a spectator, because I was doing my job. It was, you always think about the biggest story you might cover. This was it. I knew that. Other reporters knew it. Whether or not Kennedy was wounded or had been killed, we knew it was a big story, and I went after every detail I could.
Hey.
Hi there, come on in.
Hey, thank you. It's right here, and it's just as it was. Tell me.
Well, the Texas School Book Depository, all of Dealey Plaza, I mean, this is sacred space when we look at the history of our nation. And sites like this, sites like Pearl Harbor, the Murrah Building in Oklahoma City, the footprint of the World Trade Center, these sites that are stained by violence and tragedy, they gain a symbolic significance, and they allow us to do justice to the tragedies that took place here by remembering them properly.
I look at that camera, and he took it everywhere with him. I mean, all our home movies, every hour of the hours and hours and hours of home movies that my family had was shot on that camera. And I have all of that film at home. I have every bit of home movies that people were shooting home movies on this. My dad was shooting home movies with this camera, and my whole growing up was captured on that camera right there. And it's here for perpetuity. It's really a blessing. Okay, that's your photograph. Okay, that's your dad's photograph.
Yes, that's the one he took, the still photograph.
That's something.
I looked up when the first gunshot went off, but I wasn't looking at anything. I was just wondering who's throwing firecrackers out of a window.
Sometimes you are assigned to history.
It did change my life. I don't know what it would have been like if it hadn't happened, but it had to have changed my life.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your community, click the subscribe button here. You can also download the Spectrum News app or watch us on TV for the latest information, balanced coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.